Hi, my name is Thais, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, we're going to follow up with a previous video I just posted about the different stages of a relationship and how they impact your attachment style. So first and foremost, if you haven't already seen it, go back and watch the earlier video because it outlines the different stages of a relationship, which will help you to recognize which stage you're in. Now, the reason that this is so important is because different attachment styles not only move differently at a different pace in each of the stages of a relationship, but they carry different expectations, they have different protest behaviors, and they exhibit different parts of themselves. And so to really get an in-depth understanding about how to navigate a relationship, we have to be clear about how we are in each of the stages of a relationship, what shows up for us, what wounds, what fears, what expectations, what needs, and what patterns of protest behavior so that we can learn to mitigate these things in advance. And also so that the mind doesn't fill in the blanks, because as an example, I often see a fearful avoidant really struggle in the stability phase of a relationship, or an anxiously attached individual struggle in the stability stage of a relationship because they are used to the high and the honeymoon phase, and they want the neurochemicals and the oxytocin, and so sometimes they'll regress back to the power struggle phase because they're trying to create some kind of conflict to make them feel alive, because they think love is turbulence. Those are their subconsciously stored associations. And so when we take one attachment style that's struggling in that phase and they don't realize that, hey, you're in this phase, this is actually a good sign, this is a rite of passage, it's easy for this attachment style to judge it, to sabotage a relationship in this phase, to leave too early and regret it later. Like, a lot of different patterns can come up. So I will say a couple things before I dive into this part of the video, because in this part, I'm going to give you some just initial tools and strategies. We have these courses coming out inside the Personal Development School that are in depth, tell you all the different protest behaviors that your attachment style will experience, the different core wounds, the feelings, the patterns, the expectations, how the different attachment styles are going to move differently at those paces in a lot of detail, and how to really work those differences out between yourself and a partner based on what stage they are in with you and how fast they're progressing through the stages. So keep in mind, as we go through these stages, you can progress at a different rate, and you can progress, but you can also digress. So you can go from, let's say, for example, the honeymoon phase into the power struggle phase, and then into the stability phase, but then you might, hit this rocky period because, let's say, one style doesn't understand that the stability phase is a good sign and things are supposed to be a little more stable and calm. And so they start creating, fights or challenging dynamics. You might digress the relationship back to the power struggle phase. So the 6 phases I'll go through quickly in case you haven't watched the previous video and you just want to find out as much as you can from this video now. The phases themselves are the dating phase, the honeymoon phase, the power struggle phase, the stability phase, the commitment phase, and the bliss stage. Okay. And the bliss is also sometimes referred to as the co-creation stage. Now, each attachment style acts differently in each stage. As I was mentioning, they have different sets of behaviors that surface, different parts of their attachment style. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken with people in a client relationship, and they've said things to me like, I dated people in the past, and I was with people in the past, but it wasn't until I met this person now that all these like wounds and behaviors and challenges started coming out of me. And I don't understand why they didn't come out earlier in my life. Like, were these things just living inside of me for so long? And the answer is yes. And that usually the catalysts are actually stages of a relationship that we enter into, and what's bound to come up for us in that stage, as well as who we're with and how they're handling the different stages of a relationship and how that makes us feel and what that brings up that's stored in our own subconscious inside of ourselves. So again, keep in mind, different attachment styles progress at different paces. So you usually, as an example, have a dismissive avoidant who's going to move a lot more slowly and take a lot more time in the dating phase before progressing into the honeymoon phase. They also tend to move more quickly out of the honeymoon phase and try to get through the power struggle as quickly as possible and into the stability stage. Whereas we see like fearful avoidance, anxiously attached individuals try to hang on to the honeymoon phase for longer periods of time, but usually ending up in the power struggle stage for sort of the most progressive periods of time. So each stage has unique lessons, which I talk about in the course, and also has a rite of passage. Like, we have to go through each of these stages, even though some of them are difficult. Like the power struggle stage is obviously a more challenging phase of a relationship. There are really important lessons that we have to learn in there. We get to learn how to communicate more effectively. We get to learn how to move through each other's pain points and wounds, and how to recognize them, and how to take each other's needs into consideration. And basically, this stage is for us to be able to iron out the kinks and actually integrate ourselves back into the relationship. Because in the honeymoon phase, what we might see quite often is that even though the honeymoon phase is so beautiful, there's sometimes this abandonment of self that individuals go through, and the end of the honeymoon phase is bringing the self back into consideration, which then we are sort of integrating our identity in with the identity that we're truly seeing of our partner after the mask sort of comes off, and after the neurochemistry of the high of the love and the oxytocin and all the love neurochemicals start to sort of fade off as well. Then we get to see somebody differently, and now we're actually integrating the true them and the true us into a relationship together, which of course is going to come with some challenges, right? It's different than when you're in the honeymoon phase and love is blind, and you're being sort of the best version of yourself for most of that phase. So in this video, I want to talk about the actual some initial tools for what to do here. So number one, you want to recognize what stage that you're in. You want to get really clear, all these stages last for different periods of time and for different reasons. So it's not like black and white, like, oh, the dating phase is always exactly 3 months. No, it can be 0 to 6 months. It can even progress longer in certain cases. The honeymoon phase can be 6 months all the way to 2 years, but I've seen it die, very quickly, be from the 6 to 8 month period. So it's different for different individuals based on their programming. So get clear about what stage you are in, and then ask yourself some of these following questions. These are some really great tools. So some initial tools. Ask yourself what is required for you to progress to the next stage. So let's say, for example, you look at the power struggle stage. Maybe there's this need for accepting your partner as they are, instead of resisting the changes that you're seeing as the mask sort of comes off. But get very specific. Get really specific. How would I do this? How do I create more acceptance in the relationship? Or how do I be more myself and express vulnerability more often so we can move through our challenges? So notice what patterns you're caught in, and ask yourself that question. What patterns am I caught in here that are preventing me from moving into the next stage of a relationship? And what strategies or solutions could I use to move through this phase? So start contemplating, think about this, become self-aware, because you'll see some really interesting golden nuggets come out of this for you. And then try to do this. Try to make a list of the wounds that you think come out in each stage for you and how you tend to behave when you're triggered. And try to make a list of the different protest behaviors you see yourself enacting in each of the different stages. I've seen some fearful avoidants who are like absolute darlings in the dating and honeymoon phase. And then the power struggle stage comes out and they can react so strongly. They can get very volatile, and a lot of the pain can sort of surface. I've also seen, as an example, dismissive avoidants who are very charming in the dating phase, and then as soon as the honeymoon and power struggle phase and even the stability phase come off, they become very withdrawn in that stage of the relationship. So get really clear on who you are and how you show up in each stage and the different patterns, protest behaviors, and then write a list of strategies and solutions to work through some of these protest behaviors. And if you feel so, comfortable enough, and if you're in a relationship, this might just be something you're doing to prepare yourself to be in the best place possible. If you're single right now and looking to get into a romantic relationship in the future, or to work some of this stuff out with family or friends. But if you're in a relationship itself, work on communicating with your partner about the stages. Share that you go through different stages, because it's so easy for the mind to be like, oh, we're in the stability stage. And sometimes the stability stage is associated with boredom because you get stable and comfortable. And while that's wonderful for a secure person, or even a dismissive avoidant tends to really value that security because it's one of their core needs, the fearful avoidant can get very restless and judgmental in this stage of their partner and fearful of it. And the anxiously attached partner can can start seeking attention outside of the relationship in this phase because they feel like, oh my gosh, the relationship's dying or ending. All these different preconceived notions can sort of come to the surface and take place, and they're really just misinterpretations about the life cycle of a relationship. So have these conversations, express your needs and expectations collectively. When we have different expectations of different stages, that can be a huge source of conflict that can fly under the radar. And then just keep asking yourself, like, what do we need in order to progress through these stages? And how can I grow? Or what do I need to request from my partner so that we can move through these stages together? So some really important info for you there, because this is a huge piece of why relationships fail. Research shows that people tend to seek out a divorce or separate from one another, or end a relationship most often in the power struggle phase, closely followed by the stability phase of a relationship. So get clear about what stage you're in, get the information, watch the previous video, and start asking yourself some of these questions to get the ball rolling. And if you're interested in learning a whole lot more in depth about these, please check out the advanced attachment style courses inside the Personal Development School. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for liking and sharing and subscribing to this channel.